Are you looking to make money in a high integrity way? If so, stay tuned. Welcome to the PeopleNova Podcast. I'm Rachel O'Neill, and today's guest is one of a kind. We chat about emerging entrepreneurs and creative entrepreneurs in North America, Latin America, Africa, and Europe. Our guest specifically helps two areas: sales strategy and sales process. We take a small detour to discuss logos, ethos, and pathos. Another detour to discuss our guest's favorite art. And we round out the conversation with strategies for keeping human-to-human connection despite quarantine. Let's jump into the conversation with Derrick Duplessy. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel O'Neill, and I am here today with one of my very good friends, Derrick Duplessy from the Duplessy Foundation. Hi, Derrick.
Hey, Rachel. How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing well. So glad you could join us. So Derrick, tell us a little bit about yourself and the Duplessy Foundation.
Well, I'm born and raised Boston, Massachusetts. Myself, Mark Wahlberg, Bobby Brown, a few people. So I'm very proud of that. My parents are Haitian and Cuban, and I run an organization called Duplessy Foundation. And we work with diverse entrepreneurs, and we actually teach them sales. And that's for women, people who are international, and minorities. And we use a very broad definition of minorities. So that might be racial and ethnic minorities, or people that are in LGBTQ plus. So we're really proud of what we've done in the last few years. We've helped entrepreneurs generate 4.1 million in revenue. So, I'm really excited about our work, and there's a lot more to come.
That is fantastic. I can't wait to jump in. But I want to tell the fun story first of how we met. Do you remember how we met?
I do. And I'm interested how you're going to tell this story.
So we're going to tell this together. So here's my version. I went to a networking event in Roxbury. Was it one of the Roxbury Innovation Center at the ABCD building? Or was it Mass Innovation
Yeah,
Nights?
it is the ABCD building, yeah.
I know it was the ABCD building.
Yes.
I can't remember now which brand. I go to so many networking events, as you do.
It was Mass Innovation Nights.
Okay, Mass Innovation Nights.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what year? I don't.
2017, I believe. Yeah, I think it was 17.
Sure. Math sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in the audience doing the networking thing, right? And Mass Innovation Nights, their format is to do quick pitches and introductions. And I was at the event with a wingman, because you always go to a networking event with a wing person. And then I heard you get up on stage and you're like, this is what I do. I help artists. I help startups.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately I looked at you and I'm like, I got to meet that guy. And so you did your thing, you pitched, and then we all went back to networking and mingling. And it's a big room, right? There's a ton of people there, right?
Very big room, yeah.
And I'm totally tracking you. I'm like, okay, where's he going? Okay, can I interrupt? No. And it's funny, I tell this story because at that time, not now, but at that time, I was very much I don't talk to strangers. I'm too shy. I know me shy. I don't talk to strangers, right? I let strangers approach me is the more how I navigate that piece. But I saw you on stage, and the reason that your pitch really attracted me was my work with Artisans Asylum. So we'll leave that into the conversation. But I heard your pitch, I heard artists, I heard startups, and I'm like, I got to talk to that guy. And so I found you. So I bobbed through the crowd, and I found the moment where you were able to be interrupted, and I was like, hi, I'm Rachel.
Now, I can add a little something to that, actually.
Great.
You said, hi, my name is Rachel. And then you said, do you want to join a board? That's
I'm so
exactly
subtle. I just go
the
right in for
question that you asked.
it.
Yeah, those are the first words besides like introducing yourself. So it was kind of funny.
Clearly memorable.
Yeah,
That's great. And we've been chatting ever since,
correct. Yes, including today.
including today. It was just fantastic. It was just fantastic. Derrick, Derrick, you're one of the good people. When you're one of my friendly dozen, as they say. So the point of the podcast is the human side of business, right? And right now there's a lot of shift in the economy. A lot of businesses are being impacted by the efforts to mitigate the spread of coronavirus. And we're realizing, I think, not like I never knew this before kind of realized, but a really like a deep visceral how human business is, right? It's not so much
Hmm.
business to business, but it really is human to human, right? Like we really do business with other humans. And so I wanted to get your impression on that phrase. Like, what does that mean to you when you hear it?
I mean, I'm working with entrepreneurs every day, including artists of all different kinds, and it's really interesting. Um, uh, I'll tell you about one entrepreneur I'm working with right now. She's an artist, um, and she has a project. It's called the Wonder Woman Project. And basically, what she did was she wanted to, she just came from France to Massachusetts, the Boston area, and she wanted to get involved in the community. And she started working with this shelter for women who had suffered domestic violence and had been survivors of domestic violence. And so she did art workshops with these women over a year. And then for 18 months, almost 2 years, she worked with the women there and turned that into a book of photography. And it was interesting is this portraits of the women, and they're sort of in Wonder Woman type poses.
Great.
Um, and some of that reflected the actual character of Wonder Woman, and then there was also sort of more African Asian sort of iconography of sort of warriors. So
Great.
it was just really really interesting piece, and now she wants to take that internationally in different cities like Tokyo and Paris, and obviously Boston, DC. These are all places that she's entertaining, and she actually just returned from Japan, doing a show where she was talking about what she's doing, etc. Imagine it's Japan, people are already wearing masks and stuff like that during all this crisis. She was doing a solo art show. And what was really interesting in me coaching her is that she's like, Derrick, I want to make this happen. How do I do it? And I say, you do it one person at a time. And so she saw an artist that she really admires on Instagram, and she reached out to that artist, and she was definitely a fan in that interaction, wrote a very long email, and thankfully the artist was like, hey, this sounds interesting. Let's schedule time to talk. And then the artist's assistant told her that instead of an hour, she had 15 minutes to present. Um, but what's interesting was she was looking at that conversation as the one conversation that was going to change everything, where the artist was going to be totally convinced. And what I tried to impress upon her was that it's a romance, it's a series of conversations over time. And that's how I look at sales. So when I look at human to human business, that's all it is. It's a series of conversations. In sales, it's typically one person to another person. And when you talk about marketing, sometimes it's one person to many people at one time. So when I think of human to human business, I think of that example, but also obviously all the entrepreneurs that I work with.
That was a phenomenal example, right? Couldn't have exemplified more like how we go about building strategic partnerships, how we go about selling. I'm a terrible salesperson. I'm a great talker now. I'm a great networker. But when I also, so some of my clients are, first-time CEOs, first-time founders, really early in their startups venture, still trying to sort out their own self-identity, as well as how do I build a team. And so how have you ever kind of had to navigate kind of bringing out the best in someone else?
Yeah, it's a challenge. Part of it is you have to master yourself. And if people see that you haven't, then it's going to really be hard to communicate with folks. If you're asking people to do things you're not willing to do yourself, then you got a problem.
Okay, but that's different than like video editing, for example, or like uploading things to
It
YouTube,
is.
right?
Well, it's back to the human to human thing. Um, I was doing a workshop and I was talking about how, I believe it was Socrates. It could be Plato, but please forgive me if it's not one or the other.
I'm not going to fact check you. Just
Yes, he talks about the three major ways you can make an argument. There's logos, which is logic. There's ethos, which is all around your credibility. And then you have pathos, which is all around emotion in the heart, right? So if your credibility ethos is not there, you can have logic in what you're saying, or you can have emotion and you can really sort of rally the troops. But I think that credibility is that first piece. So whether it's you doing personal work, making sure that you have all the good habits, you're doing the self-care, and that you're willing to do whatever it is that you're asking folks to do, whether you can do it or not, um, people respond to that. That's an integrity type of thing. So I think that's always step one, and people kind of like assume that it's already there. But I think as a leader, that's what you have to look at. Um, will people perceive me as somebody who's credible, who is um, somebody who walks the walk? So I think that piece is really important. And then the second piece is mastering the art of communication. Is really, really hard. Um, Companies like Google and other engineer-focused companies, a lot of startups, they all are all about written communication. And I think with written communication, um, you have to do a really good job of um, balancing the ethos and the logos and pathos in such a way that people understand what you're saying, there's credibility in it, and they feel like you're in it for the right reasons or whatever sort of gets them there. There's some kind of goal, etc. So that's hard because not all of us are great in terms of receiving written communication. So now as a leader, you have to master not only written communication, especially in times like this, but you also have to master that one-on-one conversation. We talk about audio conversation. So I think communication is like a close second to that integrity piece, because just communicating effectively where people understand what you have to say is a task and a half. And because different people respond to different things, I'm blessed or cursed that if you tell me something, I'll understand it, but I also need to see it written for it to be reinforced. So I think it's really important to be able to say, all right, I'm going to learn to write effectively, and I'm going to learn to speak effectively in such a way that people get what I'm saying. They see that I'm credible, and they see that I'm not just talking, but I'm actually speaking. And I think that's really important. And then the last piece is, I think, communication is really important. And I think it's really important to be able to say, all right, I'm going to learn to write effectively in such a way that people get what I'm saying. They see that I'm credible, and they see that I'm not just talking, but I'm actually speaking. and they feel my emotion. They feel that I actually care about the project. I care about them as a human being, and that I have some passion behind it. So it's a challenge and a half.
I want to build on that because when you say I want to learn to be a better communicator,
Yeah.
it's not just prolific. It's not just producing.
No.
The other piece that I hear, and you can check my understanding, is you also have to ask others for input and feedback. Did I get my message across, right? And to me, this embodies the growth mindset, which is body of knowledge. I love, 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 and I teach all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I advocate for it, right? Because if you're not in a place where you can approach your own learning, right? So if I'm going to learn to be a better communicator, either written or speaking, I gotta check for understanding. Otherwise, I don't know. I'm just gonna, put stuff out there, and it's either tone deaf, which we've seen plenty of in this day and age, or you're able to bounce ideas off of somebody that you trust, or you're willing to, put your ideas out on Twitter and come what may, right? Like, is Twitter the best learning ground for communication skills and getting your point across? I don't know. Some people do. I wouldn't. I'm too scared.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my point is the being able to embody a growth mindset and getting that loop of feedback of this was my intention. Let me put that out there. Did I communicate that intention? What did you hear? Check for understanding.
Yeah, that's a huge piece of it. If because communication is between at least two parties, and once you get more and more people involved, room for misinterpretation is there. So, that the variable of the other side or the other sides means that you got to create a feedback loop, and that's probably the most important part of communication. Being effective and like knowing how to write and knowing how to speak. I think there's a small percentage of people that can do those things really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just like, hey, did you get that? Was that clear? And trying to take notes on what worked and what didn't work, and then improving that over time, that's more important, not only because the other side or the other side's going to understand what you're trying to say and communicate, but because the other side is seeing that you're making the effort
Mm-hmm.
to listen. So I think that piece is super undersold,
Yeah.
but that people will give you credit if you suck at like speaking, but you're really good about following up with people and creating that feedback loop. They will forgive you. They'll be like, look, Derrick's not so great at speaking, but he's really good about following up, and now I get what he's trying to communicate. Blah blah blah. So it's huge creating that feedback loop and making it normal, not feeling any shame or feeling like you have to know everything or look credible. Um, I think true credibility is saying, look, I don't know if that hit or not. What do you think? Versus, oh, of course it hit. I know what I'm talking about. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of interesting.
I love the fact that you brought up shame and feelings of shame. Another thought leader, Brene Brown, does a wonderful piece about the difference between shame and guilt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guilt is I did something bad, to paraphrase. Guilt is I did something bad. Shame is I am bad.
Mm-hmm.
And like me as a human, I am bad, just fundamentally, right?
Yeah.
And so if we have that orientation of shame and we go and ask for feedback, it's reinforcing our shame. It's reinforcing like, oh, fuck, oh, I can't do that. Oh, I'm a terrible communicator, right?
Yeah.
Which goes back to your first point, or one of your earlier points, is that self-awareness, right? And you have to do the self-work to realize where your orientation is. And if you're coming from an area of self-understanding of like, oh yeah, that's just the monologue that I tell myself, but I'm actually, people think I'm good at this. Heck, it might actually be a superpower, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so amazing. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you for asking the question.
This is great. It's conversations with my best friends. It's wonderful. Transitioning a little bit. So you run the Duplessy Foundation. You work with clients. What is the next milestone? I like to say, how can we help our listeners?
Yeah.
Who pay attention to this? We want to pay it forward, and we want to help make connections. We put it out to the universe, and magic happens, as I like to say.
Yeah, there's a lot of milestones. I think the big one that I'm thinking about right now is um, in 2020, we want to uh, coach at least 1,000 entrepreneurs around the world. So the way that we're going to do that, I'm probably going to coach 250 of those entrepreneurs myself. But we're looking for salespeople from around the world. If you're at a name company, awesome. If you're not at a big name company, awesome as well. Who are interested in working with women, who are interested in working with people from emerging economies and minorities of different, ethnicities and
Do you
orientations.
sorry to interrupt. Do you have particular geographies? So, you're a quarter of that goal. Are there 3 other geographies-ish that you're looking for?
Yeah, in October, we're going to have a big summit, and we're going to focus on different regions, North America, Latin America. There's obviously overlap there, but Latin America, which is mostly South America, and then Africa, as well as Europe. So those are the places where we're going to focus our energy. If you're an entrepreneur in those regions and you want to get sales coaching for free or for super low cost, we want to serve you. And then obviously, if you're a salesperson or entrepreneur that loves sales, we want to work with you to virtually sit down with these entrepreneurs and hear them out, help them out with their strategy, help them out in terms of what their sales process looks like. Those are the 2 things that we focus on: sales process and sales strategy. So if any of those really ticks your boxes, then we want to work with you as a volunteer, because we know there's a lot of entrepreneurs that need help in those 2 areas.
And are you you're looking for artists, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, or like tech entrepreneurs?
Artists are entrepreneurs.
They are.
Which is, right now I'm working with 2 artists right now. One of them has the e-commerce platform, and one of them, which I gave the story of earlier, is a more traditional artist, right? Mm-hmm. She's putting together an art show. So what I try to do with every entrepreneur is say, how can this person make money in a high integrity kind of way that makes sense to them and who they are, and then figure out what the revenue model looks like.
Great.
So yes, artists are definitely in that vein. Some artists it's a hobby. They love to make stuff. They don't want to present it and all that kind of stuff. But if you're an artist and you say, this is how I want to make my living, and I want to systematize this, and I want to do something where not everything depends on my time, then we want to help you figure that out. But yes, entrepreneurs, whether they're tech entrepreneurs or not, we don't really care. We're agnostic. It's more that you're a woman, you're from an emerging economy internationally, you're a minority, and that you're going to do something meaningful with your business or as a person.
Fantastic. I love how very crisp, right? And it's great when we put crisp, asks into the universe, as opposed to like, oh, I wish I could be happier. Okay, well, what brings you joy? Joy's different for everyone.
Yeah.
All right. So my favorite question I ask everyone,
Yes.
and it's definitely on point, is what is your favorite art? It's very open, very broad, medium or piece or modality.
Mm. I think my favorite art right now is the art of storytelling.
Great.
Um, and I'll sort of go into that a little bit. So marketing is storytelling, right? Over time. And I think working with artists and entrepreneurs and helping them tell their story in such a way that will, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Get the people who want to buy from them emotionally invested is my favorite art form. So I'll tell you another story about another artist I'm working with right now. So Zainab Samu, she is an artist that I met. I think I was speaking at an event and I met her. I said, "Ooh, this girl's interesting." She had a really interesting head wrap on, and she looked like she was well traveled. Um, and the first thing that I thought of, um, and this dates me a little bit, when I saw her was the J. Peterman catalog. And I don't know, are you familiar?
No.
So you should look this up.
Okay.
So the show Seinfeld really made fun of J. Peterman. And
Yes.
yes, so essentially the J. Peterman catalog is now a website where you go and has very eccentric um, descriptions of the items. So it's more about an experience that's imagined of how that item was produced. So they might say something like, um, you know, this silk came from, a special place in Asia and it was brought over by a camel and then it turned into this scarf, which you can now, embody this journey,
I mean, I've
right?
heard
So
the
you,
Seinfeld jokes and the Seinfeld
yeah,
references, but I didn't
yeah.
realize it turned into
Those,
like something huge.
yeah. So it's an actual real catalog that's been around for, I think, 70 years or something like a long time.
Okay, long time.
So when I saw Zainab, that's what I thought of because I was like, wow, there's such a story that goes with her craft. And so what we needed to do, because she was like, Derrick, how do I make money with this? So I said, you are the star. You're basically saying I have scarves, but the scarves are 3 feet by 3 feet. So it's not like it's or almost 4 feet square. So I'm like, yes, they can be scarves, but let's be real. This is a print. This is a piece of art, and you need to tell people about your process. So what Zainab does is she picks a culture like Mali, and then she'll go and study the Fulani people. And she'll get a guide locally who shows her around. She'll meet some people, talk with them. And through a few weeks, what she'll do is just say, you know what, I'm going to take my experience here and I'm going to do watercolors or sculptures or whatever she is inspired to make. And then from there, she'll take that watercolor or that sculpture from her inspiration and turn that into a print. And those are put on wool or they're put on silk. And they're actually handmade in Italy. And so nobody knew this about her stuff. And so we had a show actually in February, which is crazy because it was February 27th. Just 2 weeks later, everything went crazy in the world.
Oh, my Lord.
So we had a show, and I had her curate the audience. So 25 people came via personal invitation, and 17 out of the 20. So what happened is at the event, she told her story, right? She talked about her process, about her newest collection, the Fulani collection. And after that presentation, I was, her a business partner was on vacation in Hawaii, so I was sort of manning the
You were the
register.
stand-in?
Yeah, I was manning the register and I could not sort of deal with the influx of people who were buying. So
Right.
17 out of the 25 purchased something after that presentation. So just her understanding that storytelling is so fascinating because she learned something and she changed as a person through her experience. And then the people who are taken in the story also learn something and change a little bit through listening to the experience. So that is really fascinating to me, and I'm trying to see how I can learn more about storytelling and how can I incorporate storytelling into my coaching for the entrepreneurs that I'm serving.
Mm, that's fantastic. I do. Your favorite art is storytelling. That's beautiful.
And she did $5,000 from that one night, by the way.
That's great. And I'm just curious, the people, the 25 invitations, were they repeat customers or were they new customers, new relationships? We talk about the
There
cost
was a
of
little,
customer acquisition.
yeah, there was a little of both. So what we
Okay.
did was we said, hey, let's look at the people who have spent the most with you, and so let's rank them that way. And you invite those folks because it was going to be her last show in her retail location. And then you ask each person to bring a friend.
Mm-hmm.
So that way we can get some new people as well as some stalwarts, some people who are very familiar with her. So it was a
Great.
good blend of people.
Great strategy.
Yeah.
I go just to stay with storytelling for a minute. I listen to a lot of pitch competitions and I listen to a lot of early stage, like rough ideas and how do we tell the narrative and how do we
Sure.
tell the story,
Yeah.
right? To get people excited about our solution.
Mhm.
And there was one entrepreneur I was chatting with, and he's like, well, we made this device to help you sleep and it gives you shocks. And I'm like, whoa. Like, I'm not sure people want to hear about shocking like sleep techniques. Can we, like, I'm a layperson, help me out. And he was very engineer, very tech, very science. And he's like, no, I've been researching. I'm like, great. Just like, can we like not call it shocks? Because that has an emotion attached to it, right? Like
Yeah.
we want people to think about your solution as far as it helping solve a problem, sleeplessness. There's lots of reasons for sleeplessness, but this was one solution that he offered. And so I'm like trying to brainstorm other ideas, like, when you walk across the carpet in the winter and you touch the outlet or the light switch and you get a little like
Yeah.
more or less than that. He's like, oh, way less. I'm like, great, tell that story. Like, that's an easy way for people to understand, not electric shock, which is a little bit intimidating to hear. So awesome. I love storytelling. Derrick, that is all the time that we have. Thank you very much. Any final words of wisdom or parting comments for our audience?
Yeah, I think that now more than ever, it's important to keep those human to human conversations and contacts going. So whether you're listening to this when everything's going to craziness and a lot of sick people out there, or things are back to quote unquote normal, I think a good habit is just to reach out to one person per day
Great.
and say, hey, I appreciate you, or hey, what's going on with you? Just do that once a day. Text message, and I think it could be a game changer for you.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. I 100% agree. And I encourage all of our listeners to take you up on that and do the one contact per day. Someone new. All right. Thank you all for joining on our podcast, and we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us on the PeopleNova Podcast. My name is Rachel O'Neill. The team here at PeopleNova Human Capital would love to hear from you. We are always curious to hear from our listeners. So go ahead and send us an email, podcast@peoplenovahc.com, with your workplace questions or suggestions for who you'd like to see on our show. If you send us an audio memo, we may include your question on the show. Lastly, we are here to amplify. Our guests are amazing entrepreneurs, and we want you to forward our newsletter to someone in your network who needs to know the amazing things our guests are doing, so together we can make an impact. Thank you so much. Take care, and we will see you next time.